Hey, welcome back to the channel. Today, I've got 3 stories that are going to make you think twice the next time you're driving alone at night. These are real experiences shared by real people, the kind of stuff that happens when you're miles from home, your phone signal is weak, and you're completely on your own. If something like this has ever happened to you out on the road, drop it in the comments. I read every single one. And if you're new here, hit subscribe. All right, let's get into it. So, a little context before I get into this. I'm a traveling nurse, have been for about 4 years now. For those who don't know what that means, basically I take short-term contracts at hospitals all over the country, usually 13 weeks at a time, and then I move on to the next one. So, I do a lot of driving, a lot. I've driven through the middle of nowhere more times than I can count. Cornfields in Nebraska at 2 in the morning, mountain passes in Montana with no guardrails and no cell service. I've done it all. I'm not someone who gets easily spooked on the road. I've heard enough creepy highway stories to fill a book, and most of the time when I'm driving late, I honestly just zone out and listen to podcasts. I'm used to it. That's important context for what I'm about to tell you, because the fact that this shook me as badly as it did says a lot. This happened about 8 months ago. I had just finished a contract in Knoxville, Tennessee, and I was driving out to start a new one in a smaller city in Arkansas. I'd done this drive before, or at least a version of it, and I knew it was going to take most of the day. I left early, around 6 in the morning, thinking I'd make it to my new place before dark. That did not happen. I ran into construction delays twice, stopped longer than I planned at a rest stop because I needed a real meal, and by the time I was getting close to the Arkansas state line, it was already past 9 at night. I wasn't panicking or anything. I still knew roughly where I was, and I had GPS going. I was tired, but manageable tired. I figured I had maybe 90 minutes left, and I just needed to push through. The highway I was on was basically empty. I hadn't seen another car in probably 20 minutes. Just my headlights, the white lines on the road, and trees on both sides as far as I could see. Around 9:45, I got a low fuel warning. I had been meaning to stop earlier, but kept putting it off, and now I was genuinely running low. My GPS showed a gas station at the next exit, about 4 miles ahead. I took the exit. The road off the exit was one of those old 2-lane state roads that goes through a small town. There were no street lights for most of it. My GPS kept saying the gas station was about 1.5 miles ahead. I passed a few dark houses set back from the road, an old church, what looked like an auto repair shop that had been closed for years. The kind of strip you drive through and immediately understand that this place was never really thriving and has been slowly emptying out for decades. I finally saw the gas station. It was a small one, the kind with only 4 pumps and a little attached convenience store. The lights were on, which was a relief. I pulled in and got out to pump. The air was warm and humid and completely still. There were no other cars. I couldn't hear anything except the pump clicking and some bugs in the trees nearby. While I was standing there, I noticed a truck parked on the far side of the lot, past the pumps, pulled up close to the side of the building. It was an older model, dark-colored, hard to tell in that light. Nobody was sitting in it that I could see, but it was running. The exhaust was going. I remember thinking maybe the driver was inside the store. I finished pumping, went inside to grab a water and some gum. There was a guy behind the counter, older, maybe mid-60s. He didn't say much, rang me up, and that was basically it. I asked if it was a quiet night, and he said, yeah, pretty much always was. I asked about the truck outside, and he hadn't noticed it, which I thought was a little weird, but I let it go. When I walked back out, I stopped, almost immediately. The truck that had been parked on the far side of the lot was now pulled up directly behind my car. Not beside it, behind it, blocking me in from reversing. I stood there for a second just trying to figure out if I was misremembering where it had been parked, but I knew I wasn't. It had definitely moved. I looked around the lot. I still didn't see anyone. I walked to the driver's side of my car and got in, locked the doors immediately.
I started the engine and then realized I had a problem. The truck was close enough behind me that I couldn't back out without hitting it. I could pull forward, but the pumps were directly in front of me. I'd have to go around them, which was possible, but tight. I started to do exactly that, pulling forward slowly to navigate around the pump island. And that's when the truck's headlights turned on, full brightness, right into my mirrors. I got around the pump island and pulled toward the exit, and the truck pulled forward too, keeping up with me, keeping those headlights in my mirrors. I called 911. I told the dispatcher I was on the highway, gave her the mile marker I could see on the side of the road, and told her I was being followed. She stayed on the phone with me. She told me to keep driving, not to stop, and that she was going to try to get a patrol car in the area. I drove like that for almost 20 minutes. The truck never passed me, never dropped back, just stayed there. Then, with no warning, its headlights disappeared. I watched my mirror for a full minute and they didn't come back. It had either turned off somewhere or killed its lights. Either way, it was gone. I stayed on the phone with dispatch for another 10 minutes. She told me a trooper had been nearby, but by the time he reached the area, the truck was already gone. I got to my destination that night and sat in my locked car in the parking lot of my new apartment building for probably 15 minutes before I could make myself go inside. I don't know who was driving that truck or what they wanted. Maybe it was nothing. Maybe someone thought it was funny to mess with a woman driving alone at night. Or maybe it was something worse and I got lucky by not stopping. I've thought about it a lot. The thing that sticks with me most is how deliberate it all felt. The way the truck moved to block me in before I even got back to my car. That wasn't random. Whoever it was had already made a decision before I walked back out of that store. I still do long drives for work. I always will. But I don't stop at isolated gas stations alone at night anymore. I'll run on fumes before I do that again.
This is a little embarrassing to admit, but I need to give the full picture so this makes sense. I was going through a rough patch a couple years ago. I'd just gone through a bad breakup. I'd quit a job I hated but also needed, and I was basically just drifting. Not in a crisis or anything, more like one of those periods where you're functional but not really present. A friend of mine suggested a road trip. He said sometimes you just need to move, physically move, get in a car and go somewhere, and the change of scenery helps. He wasn't wrong about that, honestly. So we planned a trip. Him and me and another friend, Jamie, a girl we'd both known since college. The plan was to drive from Ohio down to New Orleans, spend a few days there and drive back, about 14 hours each way. We were going to take it in one shot overnight, both directions, trading off driving so we could keep moving. The drive down was completely fine. Nothing happened. We talked and played music and stopped at a Waffle House at 3 in the morning like you're supposed to on a road trip like that. We got to New Orleans and had a genuinely great few days. Food was incredible. The city was alive. I actually started to feel like a person again. I remember thinking my friend was right about the whole moving thing. The drive back is where it went wrong. We left New Orleans around 11 at night. The plan was the same as before: trade off driving, try to sleep when you weren't behind the wheel, make it back in one push. My friend took the first shift. Jamie was in the passenger seat. I was stretched out in the back seat trying to sleep. I'm not a great car sleeper, but I was tired enough from the trip that I actually managed to drift off somewhere around the Mississippi-Tennessee border. I woke up what felt like a couple hours later. It was dark and quiet in the car, just the road noise and the low hum of the engine. I laid there for a minute, not moving, the way you do when you're half awake and not sure where you are. Then I noticed something. The car was stopped. Not at a light, there were no lights. We were pulled over on the side of the road. The engine was still running, but we weren't moving. I sat up slowly and looked around. My friend was not in the driver's seat. Jamie was not in the passenger seat. The car was empty except for me. I looked out the windows. We were on a highway, pulled onto the shoulder. There was a guardrail on the right side, trees beyond it. No other cars.
The dashboard clock said 2:47 in the morning. Both front doors were closed. I said my friend's name. Nothing. Said Jamie's name. Nothing. I got out of the car. I stood on the shoulder and looked around in both directions. The highway was completely empty in both directions. I couldn't see either of them anywhere. I walked around the car. I checked behind it, in front of it. Nobody. I'm going to be honest with you, the level of confusion I felt in that moment was unlike anything I've experienced. It wasn't just fear. It was this deep disorientation, because nothing about the situation made logical sense. Two people don't just disappear from a moving car.
I called my friend's cell phone. It rang 4 times and went to voicemail. I called Jamie. Same thing. I stood next to my friend's car on the side of a highway in the middle of Tennessee at 2:47 in the morning, trying to figure out what to do. Then I heard voices, faint, coming down the embankment on the right side of the guardrail, below where the trees started. I leaned over the guardrail and I could see the glow of a phone flashlight, maybe 40 or 50 feet below, moving through the tree line. I yelled down. My friend's voice came back up. He said they were okay and to stay there. His voice sounded weird, tight, off, not the way he normally sounds. About 3 minutes later, both of them came climbing back up the embankment. When they got over the guardrail and into the light, they both looked rattled. Jamie's eyes were red. My friend had a cut on his forearm that was bleeding a little. I asked what happened. He took a minute before answering. Then he told me. He said he had started to feel like someone was in the car. Not a feeling like nerves or paranoia. He said it felt specific, like a presence in the back seat. He said he kept checking the mirror and not seeing anything, but the feeling wouldn't go away. He said at some point he glanced in the mirror and saw what he thought was a shape behind me, next to where I was sleeping. He said it looked like a person sitting upright. He said he didn't say anything because he didn't want to panic. He kept driving. He told Jamie quietly, and she turned around slowly to look. She confirmed she saw the same thing. They both said whatever they saw didn't move, just sat there. He said he pulled over as carefully as he could, and both of them got out as fast as possible and went over the guardrail to get away from the car, and that's when I woke up. Here is what I don't know how to explain. I was in that back seat. I was the only one in that back seat. Whatever they both saw was either a hallucination they both shared, which I know sounds insane, or something else entirely that I have no framework for. I didn't see anything. I didn't feel anything. I was asleep, or at least I thought I was. We drove the rest of the way back to Ohio with every light in the car on and nobody sleeping. Nobody brought it up again for weeks. When we finally talked about it, neither of them had changed their story. They both saw the same thing at the same time, and it scared them badly enough to pull over on a dark highway and climb down an embankment in the middle of the night to get away from it. I don't have an explanation. I'm not someone who believes in that kind of thing, honestly, but I also don't have another answer. And the look on their faces when they climbed back over that guardrail is something I've never been able to forget.
I want to start by saying I know that stopping at a rest stop alone at night is not smart. I've heard enough stories to know that. I knew it at the time. I did it anyway because I was exhausted, and I convinced myself I would just close my eyes for 20 minutes and then keep going. I know. This was 2 summers ago. I was driving from my hometown in Michigan down to Florida to visit my older sister. I'd made the drive before with other people, but never alone, and I was doing it as a kind of reset. I'd had a hard year, and I just wanted to see my sister and get out of Michigan for a while. I packed my car, told myself I'd take my time, stop when I needed to, and just enjoy the drive. The first day was great. I made it through Ohio and into Kentucky with no issues. I got a motel room for the night, slept real sleep, woke up feeling good. Day 2, I was making good time. I got into Tennessee, then into Georgia,
By early evening, I was crossing into Florida, and I was feeling the end in sight. And then I hit the wall, that full-body exhaustion that just falls on you. I'd been pushing a little too hard trying to make good time, and around 10 at night somewhere in northern Florida, I couldn't keep my eyes open properly. I was doing that thing where you blink and realize you lost the second or two. That's when I knew I had to stop. There was a rest stop coming up in about 3 miles. I pulled in. It was one of the bigger Florida rest stops, the kind with the covered picnic area and the dog walk section off to the side and the main building with the bathrooms and vending machines. The lights were on, but it was quiet. There were 3 or 4 other cars parked, spread out across the lot. A couple of semi-trucks were parked in the separate truck area on the far end. Normal rest stop stuff. I parked in a spot that was reasonably well lit, cracked my windows a little for air, and reclined my seat. I figured I'd set an alarm for 30 minutes and then push through the last stretch to my sister's place. I woke up to someone tapping on my window. My first thought, before I even opened my eyes, was that it was a cop telling me I couldn't sleep there. I opened my eyes and sat up, and there was a man standing at my driver's side window. He was leaning close to the glass, looking in. I couldn't tell how old he was. Average height, plain clothes, nothing that would stand out. He looked completely normal. That almost made it worse. I didn't crack the window. I held up my phone like I was going to make a call. He didn't leave. He held up his hands in this gesture like he was saying, "Relax, don't worry." And then he pointed at my front tire and shook his head slowly, like there was something wrong with it. I want to tell you that I immediately knew this was a trick and I drove away. That's not what happened. Because the thing is, I'd driven a long way and I'd been on some rough road earlier, and for 1 second I actually thought, what if there really is something wrong with my tire? What if I drive away and blow out in the dark in the highway? That 1 second of doubt was enough for me to make a mistake. I cracked my window about 2 inches. He immediately started talking. He said he saw me pull in earlier and noticed my back right tire looked low. He said he wasn't trying to bother me, but it'd feel bad if I drove off and something happened. His voice was calm, friendly even. He was good at this, I'll say that. I told him thanks and that I'd check it when I got to my destination. He nodded like that was reasonable, but he didn't move. He asked how far I was going. I told him I was almost there. He asked if I was traveling alone. I didn't answer that one. I said I needed to get back on the road and thank you for the heads up. He took a small step back from the car, but he was still standing there, still watching me. I put the window back up, started the car, and looked in my mirror before pulling out. There was another man standing directly behind my car. He hadn't been there before. He was just standing there, hands in his pockets, directly behind my bumper, looking at my car. Not moving, just standing there. I don't know how long he'd been there. I hadn't seen him when I pulled in. I hadn't heard him walk up. He was just there. I had maybe 3 feet of clearance between my bumper and him, not enough to reverse. I sat there for probably 5 seconds deciding what to do, and then I just pulled forward. I didn't wait to see if the first man moved out of the way. I pulled forward hard, went over the curb of the parking space, cut across the grass median, and came out on the other side of the lot. I didn't look back until I was pulling out onto the highway entrance ramp. When I did look back, both men were standing at the edge of the parking lot watching me go. They didn't follow, they didn't run, they just stood there watching. I called my sister and talked to her for the rest of the drive. I didn't tell her what happened until I was actually in her driveway. When I got out of the car, I walked around and checked my tires. All 4 were completely fine. I've read about this since then. There are variations of this exact setup. Someone approaches a solo driver, says something is wrong with the car, gets them to lower their window or step out. It's a distraction technique, and the second person positioned behind the car is there to make sure you can't just reverse and leave. I don't know what would have happened if I hadn't pulled forward when I did. I don't want to know. What I think about is how convincing that first guy was, how normal he seemed, how genuinely concerned he sounded about my tire. I've tried to remember if there was anything about him that felt wrong from the start, any instinct I ignored. And honestly, there wasn't. He was good at it. He'd done it before. Travel with someone when you can. If you have to stop and sleep, find a well-lit truck stop where there are people going in and out. Don't crack your window for anyone, and if something feels off, it probably is. I made it to my sister's house at 1:15 in the morning, and I didn't sleep well for the next 3 nights. Even in her house, in a locked guest room, I kept waking up to sounds that weren't there. All right, that's all 3 for today. 3 different roads, 3 different situations, and honestly, 3 different kinds of fear. Whether it's a truck following you in the dark, something that shouldn't be in the back seat, or 2 men at a rest stop who clearly had a plan, the road has a way of making you feel very small and very alone very fast. Stay safe out there. Lock your doors. Trust your gut. And I'll see you in the next one.